Thank you so much for joining me today and taking the time to do this interview. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Your new solo album, Permission to Fly, is coming out next week. So, how are you feeling about the upcoming release?
Really, really excited about it. These things are big projects. They take a lot of work from the very beginning, thought of it, the seed to the actual album coming out. And yeah, I guess I couldn't be really any more excited or happy about it. It seems like the singles that I've released have been extremely well received. Everybody's pumped up about it and enjoying the music they've heard so far. And I kind of feel like, well, if they enjoyed that, well, then they're going to love the album because it kind of is that. I think the singles we released gave a really good picture of kind of like the scope of what is on the album. So, yeah, all good.
Yeah. Well, this album is also when you are a keyboard player, you would expect that, you're more front and center in the whole album, but you decided to sort of make this kind of a band album as well. Why did you decide to do that this time around?
Well, one of the reasons was because there was a bunch of reasons actually, but one of them was because I realized that the music that I like to listen to is music that has a good amount of vocals and songs, and as well as being like progressive. And a lot of times when it comes to doing a solo album, and for me, even in the past, my rock albums be more like kind of a statement of like, this is all the wild stuff in my mind. This is all the things I can do. Going to take you on a whirlwind and just, all this, that kind of energy. But I kind of felt like this one, I wanted to be a little bit more like comfortable, I guess, to listen to, like something that I would want to like actually sit down and relax and, also go for the Prague kind of journey thing. So I was looking for a different balance in the music that I presented. I was also thinking a lot about what kind of rock album can I put out that would make the most like sense to lead me into like the future. So if I want to do another album like this, a follow-up, it would kind of be like, okay, well, people can say, all right, he put that one out, and this one is like goes with
Yeah.
that instead of having everything be like very, very different. And I felt like creating kind of a band around myself would be a great way to do that. So those are some key things that kind of came together in the process of making this album.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that you wanted to create an album that, you would also listen to it, but would like, relax you. But what is this sort of music you put on when you want to relax? Do you have an album like that?
um, well, I listen to a lot of spacey mellow things that I like uh, myself, whether it's a Tangerine Dream album, or whether it's Sigur Rós or Ross, however you say the name of that group, or maybe some Stephen Wilson stuff like the old Blackfield things. I tend to, really enjoy music that's kind of on the mellower, spacier side. Maybe Pink Floyd is a good example, or carbon-based life forms, which is more on the electronic side of things. So yeah, there's a bunch of things that I'll go to for like just like chilling out. And as somebody who uses music for all different reasons, like whether it's meditation or whether it's just like really tripping out and having it want to expand my mind, or I kind of like music is the tool that I use for my own kind of like satisfaction and healing and everything really. And at the same time, as being a listener, I also, it's really important to me to, on all those levels, to be able to make that music as well. And I love the fact that I can, you know, that I have the ability to share my music with a lot of people, whether it's me just sitting at the piano and vibing and improvising, whether it's me making an album like Permission to Fly. Um, I know that there's a bunch of people who are going to listen to it, and hey, I'm giving them permission to fly, and I made I made the flight already for them, right? I made it easy. All you got to do is like put the album on and go for the ride. And I don't know, that's kind of like the way I think about like, you know, listening and playing music for other people.
Yeah. Is that where the album title came from as well?
Yeah, it was in the spirit of kind of wanting to make an offering that would suggest to them, to everybody, that hey, there's this album, there's this body of music that you can use to go on your own journey, your own flight. Well, people are always telling me that my music, when they listen to it, it kind of can take them on a journey. And
Mm.
I like that. I think it's really cool. And I think that also the idea of, having a full album of music and being able to kind of like spend the time and allow yourself to enjoy it without distractions and go for that ride is a beautiful thing. And as an artist, I feel it's important to keep that idea alive. I have some friends in the industry that also are thinking along the same lines. People like Stephen Wilson, a good example, who also makes albums, and the idea is that hey, you listen to, you sit down and listen to like the whole thing. Dream Theater, I mean, come on, like that. We make albums still, and that's the way we present our music, and because we think it's a valid art form and should be kept alive.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Steven Wilson, but is there like, because I guess, um, there's such a big prog community. Do you guys get to chat together sometimes and just talk about music, or is that something that doesn't happen enough?
Um, yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of friends in the Prague, space, and well, Stephen and I are pretty close friends. So, we'll get together when it's possible, um, over in the UK, or he's here. Um, but yeah, it doesn't happen enough because we're all so busy doing crazy things. But I would say that there's a camaraderie within the, Prague circle.
Yeah. Like I feel like when I talk to metal musicians, most of them don't really have time to explore or listen to music, outside of tours. But do you think that's different in the prog community?
I don't know. I think different people, everybody's different. And I think there's some of us like me that likes to know what's going on and likes to hear what people are doing. I like to know what younger artists are doing and how they're even using the influences that I have and the influence from the music that I've made. That's fascinating to me to see how it comes together, and even on their instruments, how they can grow from, like seeing a John Petrucci and growing up with him, and then having all the YouTube videos, and then what do they do with the guitar, and what do they do with the keyboard after seeing me play for many years, and trying to do something a little bit different. It's fascinating to me, and I like even doing musical projects with young musicians. Matter of fact, one of the people who played on my album is this guy from Chile. His name is Bastian Martinez, who is a young virtuoso guitarist, and he played a couple solos on the album. One of which everybody's heard already because it's on the song Embers.
Mhm.
But Bastian is an incredible next generation guitar player that's taken the influence. He says it right on his, resume, like he's taken the John Petrucci, Jordan influences and used it, and it's kind of going from there, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I was asking that is when you released, I think it was The Alchemist, I noticed a few people pointing out that it reminded them of Haken, but I know that, I mean, I thought it was a little funny because Haken often cites Dream Theater as a reference. And also, I think you both have like the common, you know, interest of liking Gentle Giant, for instance. So, how do you feel when you see other bands using you as an inspiration? How does that feel?
Yeah, no, I feel that's great, and I smiled when I saw also somebody said, "Oh, this sounds like like he's been listening to a lot of Haken or something like that." It makes me kind of laugh because yeah, I love Haken. It's great, but Haken are younger musicians than me, of course, and they're very influenced by Dream Theater and my music, which is very, very flattering. So really, it's kind of like the other way around. But and yeah, and they were influenced by Gentle Giant, and of course that's one of my bigger influences. So it all depends on your awareness and where you're coming from, what you think is from who and where, and all that. But it's funny that you mentioned that.
One thing I also noticed is that you asked your daughter to write lyrics for this album. And at least
Yeah.
for me, my dad was the one who, taught me how to listen to prog music when I was a kid. I was wondering, do you have that kind of a relationship with your daughter? And is that also why you trusted her to, write the lyrics for this album?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about the Ariana writing the lyrics is that she's really been trained on prog since she was very, very little, hearing Yes and Genesis and Pink Floyd and ELP and all the different things that I've exposed her to. So she has a very strong awareness of all that kind of music, and also she's kind of got a great sense of rhythms. She can tap in 7 and 5, and yeah, I mean she grew up with me, so this that's it's kind of what it was. But also she's her focus is on language. So as well as being very creative, she was an English major at school in college, and she's a linguist and speaks Italian and French and Spanish, and so when it came time to write these lyrics, which I knew were going to be very important because there was a lot of vocals on the album, she just took that on happily and did a great job. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds really good. And I guess in prog music, everything is always sort of abstract. And I think she also really nailed that. Like I really enjoyed listening to the lyrics as well and paying a little
yeah.
attention to
Oh,
that.
thanks. I'll tell her. She yeah, she knew exactly what to do. I mean, she was really writing kind of in the style, which I found to be
Yeah.
really interesting. It wasn't that she was like writing her own thing. She knew where all this is coming from, and the kind of the a good mixture of like fantasy and reality, and all the kind of factors that go into like a progressive rock kind of like lyric, if you will.
Did you like when she wrote the lyrics, did you tweak something or did you just leave it as is?
Very, very slightly. Occasionally I'd be like, I don't know if that word sounds great. Maybe we should try another word. The little things, but just because my sensitivity is very much about the way the word sounds with the music. Because I don't, one of the things I really, really hate is when I'm listening to music and going for the ride, if you will, and all of a sudden there's a word that kind of like doesn't fit the phrase of the music, and it's like, why'd they put that word there? I'm really like funny about that. Like I can tell when like words are like pasted on to a melody, or when they're not as sensitive as I am about the way they sound with the phrase. So that was really important to me, and Ari did an incredible job dealing with that. But occasionally, because I am who I am, I'd be like, you know what, let's find another word that sounds smoother with that part.
Yeah. Would you call yourself a perfectionist or is that sort of okay in that sense?
To a point, yeah. I mean, it's funny because I'm in a world of perfectionists, like the guys around me, like a John Petrucci, as an example, being the producer of Dream Theater. I mean, the patience that he has and the desire for perfection is really commendable, and I can relate to it. But maybe he even goes beyond what he'll take even more time than I will and go back again and back again. I'm like, wow, man, that's amazing. But we're all kind of that spirit. We all want it to be really, really right. And that's why when people ask me, oh, like you have a lot of albums out, and like, which one is your favorite, or, what feels special to you? I'm like, they're like children. Like, we don't put anything out. I don't put anything out solo wise. We don't put anything out with Dream Theater that is not completely like what we really wanted to do.
Yeah.
We don't let it out until it's really our statement. Really, we feel really, really good about it. So there is that kind of mentality behind things. And certainly with my, like with this new solo album, yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of time to craft these things. But the other part that's worth mentioning is that a lot of young musicians, or any musician, gets hung up and they have trouble putting things out. And there's a problem, and sometimes people have a problem there because they're not willing to let go of an idea. It's always like, I got to go back, it's not good enough, so I'll put that on the shelf, I'll try again. That is definitely a trap, and it's not the way to make, to
Mm.
let go. At a certain point, when you're a creative person that wants to produce a product, you have to trust enough in your own being that, and say, it's okay, this is me now, I'm going to release this. Maybe next year it'll be different. Or maybe if I had more time, then maybe I would change it. But this is good for now. And then you make that the best you can make it, and you go with it and you let it go. So I think that that's a big part of that skill is as important as any other skill when it comes to being able to actually make an album and put out product. And Dream Theater is really great at that as well, because when we write music, we allow things like, yeah, like that's great, okay, let's do that. We don't like sit there and second guess things like all day long. We're okay to like, make a decision. Yes, that's a cool part, let's use that. And then then we'll be orchestrating and fixing and doing things and making it even cooler. But a lot of that message of what I just said is important for other musicians to understand.
Now, I have a few vocalist friends who are in a band with keyboard players that write vocal melodies and such, and they're all always complaining sort of how when a keyboard player writes vocal melodies, it can be very, difficult for a singer. So in that sense, what was it like for you to work with Joe Payne on the vocal melodies and such?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing writing. I mean, I like writing melodies. I'm a keyboard player, and a lot of us, we have a left hand, we can write bass lines. We have a right hand, we can write, melody lines. But yeah, because like everybody has a different vocal range. And I had never worked with Joe before, so I was kind of writing melodies for his range as well, or what I thought, was a comfortable range. And of course, I'd learned a lot after doing this album. And if we go and we do another one, I'll have even more information about that to help. But it worked out really well, first of all, because Joe's an excellent musician, and he was able to go in, and if something didn't feel quite right, he could change it a little bit or do whatever. But basically, I sent him all the melodies that I composed, and then as I mentioned, he was able to go and work with them. And one of the amazing things about Joe Payne's voice is that he has virtually no break between his like main voice and his falsetto voice. You can't even hear the separation. It's also smooth. So even if I wrote something really high, it was kind of like he could do it.
Yeah.
The only question was whether how much power I wanted in the higher notes. And that was a consideration, certainly.
Yeah, well, I saw many people compare him in that sense to John Anderson, even though he has like a different type of voice, but he's like quite interesting. When like I think people will probably know the story of how you met him and why you were working together. But when did you yourself realize that you wanted to have him as a vocalist? Was there like a specific moment?
Yeah, well, I had found out about him through my friend at Prague Report, Roy, and he mentioned to him one day. Roy just had a feeling that I would enjoy talking to Joe and maybe seeing if we could do something together. Just the thought he had in his head. So he introduced me to Joe, and the timing was really good. When I spoke, and I got Joe on a Zoom call, and when we spoke at first, I think he was thinking that he would maybe that we were being connected because maybe he'd have me working on his solo album. Um, but then I was thinking I'm kind of like looking for somebody to work on my album. So as the timing all worked out, his solo album was basically done, but mine was just at the very beginning. So I eventually, after talking a couple times and feeling like, oh, I like this guy, is so great, I asked him if he wanted to sing on the album, because I did some, research and heard a bunch of his performances, and I even discovered his old band, the Enid, from way back when, that I had never heard of. But I was excited about what I heard. I remember sending it to my wife, and my daughter said, "Listen to this guy's voice." And they're like, "Oh yeah, it's a great voice. It's so musical, so pleasing." So that's kind of like how that went and how that came about.
Well, you have obviously you mentioned in quite some interviews that you have like this core band because, and you mentioned earlier that you wanted to also look to the future. So in that sense, you think that touring this album, besides, the Dream Theater tour coming up, is that among the possibilities like for the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. The Dream Theater thing is all encompassing right now. Matter of fact, I'm spending a lot of time in front of my keyboard just programming and remembering all these riffs, and it's big job. Um, but I'd like to think that we could go on to the future and maybe do another album with this lineup if everybody's available and interested at that point. And then that'd be really cool to find some time to play live.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that I keep in my mind.
Yeah. Well, that would be quite, that would be quite exciting. Yeah, anyway, Dream Theater is also about to embark on a new chapter, also with drummer Mike Portnoy joining the band again. And you're doing this huge 40-year anniversary tour, and you also have a date in Finland. So how are you looking forward to that?
Yeah. Well, again, yeah, I'm just preparing like crazy right now. There's a lot of factors going into the show. It's going to be a big show for us. A lot of elements, cool visual things that are happening, and as well as all the audio. It's going to be a long show. It's an evening with show, which I think the fans basically called for. So I'm going to the gym a lot to make sure that I can stand up for 3 hours and play, without having to take a nap. Um, but it's really, really exciting. The whole thing has been exciting, from the moment we decided to, have Mike Portnoy come back to join us. It was kind of very emotional, and, him walking into the room and us starting to work together on this new album. And, it's been amazing. It's really, really great. It feels like, he's back to where he belongs, and, doing the kind of things within Dream Theater that I think are going to be so appreciated by the fans.
Mm.
And it's been a nice welcome home kind of a thing, and then we're going to go on this tour, which the fans have been incredibly like supportive of, and people are buying tickets like crazy. And you know I'm looking forward to coming to Finland as well. It's one of my favorite places to come to. I've got friends there, and I just like it there as well. And I think I even have a day off there, I noticed. So that'll be awesome.
Well, anyway, I think that's pretty much it for our time and my questions. Do you have any last thoughts you want to share
Okay.
with your fans?
Well, it's going to be a great time for Dream Theater. Excited that everybody's going to come out and join us for this big celebration. And we're all working hard to make sure that it's going to be really, really special.